In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delves into the chaotic political landscape surrounding the U.S. Congress, focusing on the conflict involving Speaker Mike Johnson, former President Donald Trump, and entrepreneur Elon Musk. The discussion centers on the ongoing negotiations regarding a continuing resolution aimed at preventing a government shutdown, while also addressing the complexities of political principles versus pragmatism. Shapiro begins by emphasizing that politics is fundamentally a balancing act between principle and pragmatism. He argues that those who claim that pragmatic decisions are merely betrayals of principle misunderstand the nature of political negotiations. Conversely, he also critiques those who suggest that abandoning principles for the sake of pragmatism is acceptable. The essence of effective governance, he asserts, lies in finding a middle ground where both principles and practical realities can coexist. The podcast explains that a continuing resolution is essentially a stopgap funding measure, necessary because Congress has been unable to pass a comprehensive budget. With Chuck Schumer leading the Senate and a slim Republican majority in the House, the situation is fraught with challenges. Shapiro notes that while the Wall Street Journal editorial board supports the continuing resolution as a means to avoid a government shutdown, it is laden with pork, unnecessary spending that complicates the negotiations. The continuing resolution under consideration would extend funding through March 14th of the following year, allowing the new GOP Congress to utilize budget rules to pass a reconciliation bill with a simple majority in the Senate. However, Shapiro points out that this continuing resolution includes significant spending provisions, such as $100 billion for disaster relief and $10 billion for farm subsidies, which have drawn criticism from various factions within the Republican Party. Shapiro highlights the conflicting interests among key players in this political drama. Trump, who is positioning himself for a return to the presidency, seeks to clear the legislative deck before taking office. He desires an increase in the debt ceiling and aims to avoid being blamed for any spending that occurs before his administration begins. Meanwhile, Speaker Johnson is tasked with navigating these complex negotiations, trying to appease both Trump and the more fiscally conservative members of his caucus. The podcast also discusses the role of Elon Musk and his initiative, Doge, which aims to expose wasteful spending in government bills. Musk's criticisms of the continuing resolution have sparked backlash against Johnson, complicating the speaker's efforts to secure a deal. Shapiro argues that while Musk's points about the bill's flaws are valid, the public outrage directed at Johnson is somewhat misplaced, as he is merely trying to manage a coalition of diverse interests. Shapiro critiques the media's portrayal of the situation, noting that they have inaccurately suggested that Musk is somehow the de facto president, overshadowing Biden's actual role. He emphasizes that the media's framing can distort public perception of the political dynamics at play, particularly regarding who is responsible for the ongoing chaos in Congress. As the discussion unfolds, Shapiro explains the intricacies of the legislative process, particularly in a closely divided Congress. He points out that Johnson's ability to pass legislation is hampered by the need to negotiate with both moderate Republicans and those who are staunchly opposed to any increase in spending. This delicate balancing act is further complicated by the looming threat of a government shutdown, which could have significant political repercussions for the Republican Party. Shapiro also addresses the potential consequences of a government shutdown, suggesting that Republicans may be blamed for any fallout, particularly if they fail to secure a clean continuing resolution. He argues that the perception of blame is crucial in shaping public opinion and influencing future elections. The podcast highlights the backlash against Johnson from various factions within the Republican Party, particularly from those aligned with Trump and Musk. Shapiro notes that both Trump and Musk have expressed dissatisfaction with the continuing resolution, framing it as a betrayal of conservative principles. This public dissent puts additional pressure on Johnson, who is already navigating a challenging political landscape. Shapiro emphasizes that the criticism directed at Johnson is often unfair, as he is working within the constraints of a divided Congress. He argues that the expectation for any speaker to deliver on all conservative priorities without compromise is unrealistic and counterproductive. As the podcast concludes, Shapiro reflects on the implications of the current political turmoil for the future of the Republican Party. He suggests that the ongoing conflict between different factions within the party could hinder their ability to effectively govern once Trump returns to office. The need for unity and a coherent strategy will be essential for Republicans to achieve their legislative goals.